So Germany have had their final group game of the tournament. They are now preparing for the round of 32, and we know who they'll play now. Obviously, Julian Nagelsmann had complained about finding out last minute of who they're going to play because they play on Monday. And like Germany, I found out today who they would play, and so now we're doing the review and then the preview of the Ecuador game and the preview of the round of 32 game. So the Ecuador game was basically meaningless for Germany. They'd already won the group, and so they had nothing to play for. But Nagelsmann was like, fuck changes, I'm playing the exact same team. Obviously, there were a couple of changes through necessity. Antonio Rudiger replaced Nico Schlotterbeck, and David Raum replaced Nathaniel Brown, who was also injured. So those were the only changes made, rather than completely changing the side and giving players a much needed rest, which maybe you could make the argument that may have been better and smarter to do, considering you only had 4 days turnaround, or at least making some changes. But he stuck with the same team, and I think his argument was, we haven't played that much with this team. Where they had 2 warm-up games where they played the exact same team, and this is their 5th game now. I know you don't have the length of qualifying to do that too, but you know what I mean. And so they played the exact same team, and it started off great for Germany, but shit for everyone else when Leroy Sané opened the scoring. And so you're thinking, oh fuck, of all the people, this is actually the worst thing to happen to Germany in this game. Not even the result itself, it's the fact that Leroy Sané scored the opener. Because now, this is in his mind, this has vindicated Julian Nagelsmann. And it's vindicated him, so now he's gone, oh, Sané scored. Now Sané can keep playing because he's shown he can perform for Germany in a meaningless game. And so Sané's place for Euro 2028 is already confirmed after that 1 goal. But apart from that 1 goal, Sané was shit. But, you know, don't let Nagelsmann try and fool you that Sané had a good game, because he didn't. He was shit. Along with actually most of Germany, because basically, not long after, Ecuador equalised. And so then you're like, okay, we have an interesting game on our hands here. It was a bit back and forth. And then another controversial person who entered this tournament for Germany was Manuel Neuer. And there has been question marks about Neuer, about his ability, his consistency, and if he's too prone to make mistakes. And people were like, no, he's not really that good. You know, Oliver Baumann should be number 1. Well, there was talk whether Baumann would have started this game, give him a reward, because he genuinely has earned it, unlike Neuer. Then it's like, Nagelsmann won't allow this. Neuer will start. And then Neuer, there's first a chance, I can't remember what, long ball's played through, and like there's a mix-up between Neuer and Tah, and like Germany are very lucky not to concede from that. And then right in the 77th minute, a corner's played in by Ecuador. It's flicked on, and Neuer goes to grab it, but the Ecuador striker, Gonzalo Plata, got to the ball, or managed to stick his foot out quickly enough that he managed to divert it in the net and win Ecuador the game. And so Ecuador won 2-1, and that meant they finished 3rd and qualified for the next round. Apparently they even had a national holiday the day after. But I think if we're talking mistakes, that one, I would say that's kind of just reaction time. Well, Neuer is 40, so his reaction time has been declining compared to Plata, who is 25. So you can make the argument reaction time, but I just think that from a mistake perspective, that isn't really as bad as the earlier incident with Tah. Obviously, that one didn't have any consequences, unlike this one. But I do think it did raise questions about... It has raised reasonable questions about Manuel Neuer. But this does fit the theme that Germany haven't really convinced yet. And it's not going to get easier for them as the tournament goes along. You know, they beat Curacao 7-1 and you're like, okay, there's not really a lot to take away from this game because it was Curacao. And and you can't really, there was no way to judge their level. And so whether 7-1 was a good enough result or bad enough, you know. And then they just beat the Ivory Coast. And here they lost to Ecuador. Argentina lost in the last World Cup and still won. Spain lost in 2010 and still won. And now granted this game was meaningless, but they playing the exact same team as well that you're expected to play in the next game and you played in the game beforehand and losing does raise question marks. Because the enlargement of this tournament, it means you think, oh, Germany have got to, if Germany win the next game, oh, they get to the next round, that's great. But in reality, that's just the round of 16. And if everything goes to plan, which I'm more than certain it will do, who they will play, they're fucked. I think it's the easiest way to say it. But now we're getting a bit far ahead of ourselves. Because in the round of 32, Germany will play Paraguay. Now, how did Paraguay get here? They finished third in a group with the US, Australia and Turkey. In their opening game, they convincingly lost to the US. Then in the second game, they surprisingly beat Turkey. Obviously, Turkey ended up crashing out of the tournament. And then in their final game, they drew with Australia. This is the second South American team that Germany play in a row. And because obviously we can use this as like an indicator of the level of Paraguay, is obviously Ecuador finished second and they had a very good defence, while Paraguay finished sixth. But to be fair, they also had a good defence. They had the second best defence in CONMEBOL qualifying behind Ecuador, Argentina, and then they had the joint best with Argentina, or second best with Argentina. So that kind of, you get the level kind of Paraguay. There's some notable players, Omar Alderete, who's currently at Sunderland, used to play for Hertha Berlin. That's about it. So because of that, I did include Raul Bobadilla, who hasn't played for the national team in 5 years, or 6 years, and I'm pretty certain is now retired. But he did used to play for Borussia Mönchengladbach and Augsburg in the Bundesliga. So considering Germany's performance against Ecuador, I do think they have to be really cautious playing against Paraguay. Because Paraguay are clearly a good defensive unit, as their stats have shown, apart from the opening game against the United States. And any sort of lapse in concentration could really fuck Germany up. And they could, the same thing happened as it did against Ecuador, happen against Paraguay. And then in what has been an underwhelming World Cup so far for Germany, obviously in recent history, this is a success. But in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty underwhelming. Going out in the round of 32 is not ideal, especially against an opponent who you should really comfortably be beating. If Germany do win this though, and France beats Sweden, which to be fair is not a completely easy game, I think there was a chance that Germany could have potentially played Sweden, and that would also potentially be a problem. If France win and Germany win, they'll play each other in the round of 16. As I have said and pointed out, Germany are fucked. Like, France are obviously one of the best teams in this tournament. They may even go on and win it. So last, I mentioned this before, but I may talk about it again if we get to that point. Last summer, they played each other in the Nations League finals in the third place playoff, and Germany were the better side against France, but were unlucky. In this situation, they don't have a chance at the moment. Obviously, France do have their weak points, mainly in like midfield and defence. But like Germany's weak point is also the defence and coming up against an attack, which has Kylian Mbappe, who's been one of the best players in the tournament, Ousmane Dembele, who is hitting form in the tournament. I mean, he hadn't scored a goal in an international tournament until against Iraq, and now he's scored 4 goals in 2 games. Then you have Michael Olise, who we know from the Bundesliga is a problem. And then whoever on the other side is either Bradley Barcola or Desiree Doué. I mean, Joshua Kimmich struggled against Yandy Mande. Obviously, Yandy Mande is a very good player. It's over for him if he has to go against Doué or Dembele. And so speaking of the expected Germany 11 against Paraguay, it's again expected to be the same as it was against Ecuador. The only doubts are Nathaniel Brown, and if that's the case, David Raum will play. And the other is Alexander Pavlovic, who went off injured against Ecuador, and he was replaced by Angelo Stiller. Stiller did okay when he came on, but it will be up to Nagelsmann to decide whether so you either play Stiller, or the other option is you move Kimmich into midfield to play next to Felix Metscher. However, then you're left at right back where you don't really have another right back properly. You have central defenders who can play at right back, whether that be mainly Waldemar Anton, but even against Ecuador, Kimmich was subbed off for Malik Thiaw, which is also an option. But I feel like that's just a wrong move for Nagelsmann to move out of Kimmich and replace him with a centre-back, more or less. However, you could make the argument that, I think people have mentioned this before, in 2014, Joachim Löw was forced to change the formation. He had to play Philipp Lahm at right back instead of midfield after an injury. But I think it would be best to keep Kimmich at right back, mainly because the drop-off in quality is quite big. And then you play Stiller in midfield, or Pascal Gross. But I just don't... Gross shouldn't be starting for Germany in a round of 32 game of the World Cup. Or the alternative is Leon Goretzka too. But I think in terms of play style, Stiller is the closest you've got. The closest who is also mobile. And so I think that would make sense for Stiller to play over Goretzka or Gross and replace Pavlovic, obviously. But obviously this is Nagelsmann. He's proven to be a bit of a live wire. Make some crazy decisions, as in playing Leroy Sané in every single game imaginable. So yeah, I do expect Germany to win this, but we are approaching the end of the road for Germany at this World Cup. By the end of next week, it'll be over for them. I think it's safe to say that. But let me know what you think about Germany against Ecuador, how they did, if they could have improved in any way. Obviously they could have. Why did I say that? And your thoughts about potentially playing Paraguay, or them playing Paraguay in the round of 32.